I love psychology and neuroscience and thinking about how brains think. And some people, God bless their souls, will read a BuzzFeed article about some pop psychology BS and use that to influence their lives and the lives of the people around them. And it drives me insane. Often it'll just be a headline of something that's half thought out or not understood and not properly researched. And it's dangerous. I believe it's damaging to spread misinformation about how your brain works, how to cope with difficult emotions, how to approach problems and deal with your stuff. So to avoid us all making the same mistakes, let's explore some psychology myths. Ooh, this one's interesting and is going to annoy some people. Personality is not shaped by whether a child is firstborn, the youngest, or an only child. I don't know. Let's zoom in. Let's get a better look at this one. Yeah, you hear it all the time. Firstborn children become strong-willed, dominant adults. They're like parental helpers, whereas younger siblings, seeking a place in the family, become experimenters and push boundaries. By the way, this list is by Psychology Today. Careful testing of these hypotheses finds little to no evidence for them. An investigation found no support for the effect of birth order on the propensity to take risks, i.e. pushing boundaries and the younger child being more out there, I think. In 2015, German psychologists analysed data from thousands of people in the US, UK and Germany and found no significant correlations between birth order and traits such as agreeableness, conscientiousness, imagination. In another study that year, psychologists Radhika Damian and Brent Roberts found only very small associations between birth order and personality. Some of them contradicted previous theorizing. Later borns, for example, were not more agreeable than firstborns. Interesting. I'll be honest, in my mind, this kind of doesn't make sense. Obviously, purely the order in which you were born is not going to change who you are. But surely the way your parents have raised you, being the firstborn versus the second versus the third, and then having the support or not support of siblings around you changes who you are in that sense. Let's read on. The idea that being an older or younger sibling molds one's personality seems intuitive. Yes. So Roberts, who's a psychologist at University of Illinois, is saying that a younger child may be seen more rebellious today, but could cool down by the time he's as old as the firstborn now. So if you've got two brothers, one's 30 and the other's 10, obviously the 10-year-old is going to be more rebellious and more loud or whatever. So is it the perception of parents and people around them that, oh, my older child's so much more chill? It's like they don't remember them being like that when they were younger, potentially. Although the German team found roughly 1.5 IQ point increase on average for older birth position siblings. That's interesting. Could that be because parents take more care with the firstborns? They also found somewhat higher self-reported intellect ratings in firstborns. Self-reported intellect? Is that them saying, yes, I'm smart? Even this finding might not be universal. A recent study of an Indonesian sample did not find any link between birth order and intelligence. There is cultural differences there, like the Western versus Eastern ways of raising a child is very different. So this is the actual study. Wow. They had 377,000 people take part in the study. Yeah, we found very small association between birth order and personality. Average absolute partial correlation of 0.02. That is very low. But why? I'd love to read the whole thing, but it's behind a paywall. Oh, left-brained or right-brained. I did mention this in a video the other day. Am I stupid? Did I make a mistake? You do not have a dominant brain hemisphere. Okay. I did wonder whether this was still a thing or not, because I did a short about two conjoined twins, and they kind of shared the same brain. It was two brains, but it was melded together like two hemispheres, and it worked interconnectednessly. I was trying to distinguish whether at what point is that one person if they're sharing a brain. I don't know. A popular idea suggests that the right hemisphere dominates the brains of intuitive thinkers, whereas analytical thinkers are left-brained. I thought it was the other way around. The right and left hemispheres do specialize in different mental functions, but the notion that individuals rely more heavily on one over the other glosses over the complexity of the left-right relationship. Yeah, that's what I thought was the case. Because there is different areas in the brain that are responsible for different functions, and if they can get damaged, then that can change how your brain works and your personality at times. In the mythical left-brained right-brain scheme, the left hemisphere facilitates language while the right handles perception. But in fact, he explains, language is distributed across the hemispheres. At least in right-handed people, the left hemisphere is typically better at using grammar when producing and understanding language, whereas the right hemisphere is better at passing tone of voice to understand the intent. Interesting. So if you have damage in your right hemisphere of your brain, you can still understand language, but not the meaning behind it, potentially, and you can't pick up on social cues. I wonder if the opposite is true. Yeah, surely. You don't understand the language, but you understand the tone. But tone is different between cultures. So it's not the same as not understanding a language. It's not understanding the form and grammar of it. It's something to think about. Neuroimaging research shows that these processes recruit both hemispheres. Brain structure and function may vary between individuals, and our left-right division is too blunt to capture that variation. Yeah, because everything in life requires a multitude of parts of your brain. But thinking that one part is going to be more dominant and affect your personality and how you live your life, I could see that if you're more not interested at all in art and you're more maths based, all this kind of stuff, does that lean towards being hemisphered? I don't know. Sounds like a slur, that. Oh, I've heard this one going around a lot lately. People aren't visual learners, auditory, or kinesthetic learners. That's a myth that I feel like we all got taught in high school. Okay. The endorsement of learning styles myth by many teachers may stem from noticing how one student may achieve enlightenment from an approach that seems useless for another student. Like, I like looking at stuff. I find it hard to listen to people's words. I find it easier to read. So in that sense, I would be attributed to being a visual learner. But the research suggests that I wouldn't learn better purely from a visual medium versus any other medium. Harold Pashler in a 2009 paper suggested that students do of course differ in ability and the manner of instruction can make a difference. What studies have failed to show is that for students in general, educators are more successful if they target putatively hands-on learners, auditory learners or visual learners with distinct styles of instruction, rather than giving all students the same kind of lesson or one that involves different elements such as a combination of words and visuals. Wait, so is this a myth or not? Researchers caution that the myth could even impede learning, as when people think they themselves are limited to and not going to be able to learn in certain ways, like if I was locked into being a visual learner, they may not try to learn a certain skill because they think it doesn't match the way their brain works. So it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy eventually, where I believe I'm only a visual learner, I don't engage with other ways of learning, so I don't learn things that way and I don't build that skill. And then it further solidifies the belief that that's the only way I can learn because that's the only way I do learn. I'm not building listening skills or anything else. Critics of the learning styles concept stress that there are evidence-backed techniques for enhancing learning that could apply to virtually anyone. A lot of students who struggle don't realize that they have to practice retrieving information, not just taking it in. Oh my god, yes, thank you for saying that, because the amount of times that people are being like, oh, I can't study, I do all this stuff and then I don't even like remember it. Are you processing it? Are you just writing it down and forgetting about it? Are you thinking about the content? The way your brain stores memories is by thinking about it, perceiving it, interpreting it, and it locks it away. If you're just reading something like I'm doing now, I might not take this in. You have to go away and think, oh, so what was that saying about learning styles? Oh, so this, and this, how does it apply to me? Make it contextual. Really understand what it is that you're studying. There's solid evidence that quizzing can aid memory. Unsubstantiated ideas about what differentiates students could distract from what boosts all of them. Yeah, because in my mind, when I remember things, I remember in visuals. If I was doing a quiz and say there's a question about the planets of the solar system, I imagine the solar system. Like, what's the fourth planet from the sun? Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, right? And then because I've retrieved that information, it's been stored somewhere, I've thought about it and I've retrieved it. It further solidifies the neural pathways in my brain to make me be able to remember that and recall it when I need to. Ooh, I don't know about this one. Multiple intelligences. So interesting. What is this talking about? This might annoy me. Look, I'm saying the myths. I don't have to agree that they're myths, all right? I can choose to still believe them. So this is the myth that there's different kinds of intelligence: emotional intelligence, musical intelligence, artistic intelligence. This is saying others are not equivalent to intelligence as captured by an IQ test. I haven't really looked into IQ tests much, but I'm pretty sure people don't like them as a test for intelligence because it's very westernized and it's based on certain groups of people and certain kinds of tasks. And then there's also debates about it being just memory recall versus problem solving. What is intelligence? That's a wider topic to discuss. But let's see what this says. General intelligence, which IQ tests reliably assess, has proven a robust predictor of such life outcomes as educational attainment and later success. What do they say intelligence is? Reading a roadmap upside down, excelling at chess, and generating synonyms for brilliant may seem like three different skills. Amazing. Fantastic. But each is thought to be a measurable indicator of intelligence, or G, a construct that includes problem-solving ability, spatial manipulation, and language acquisition that is relatively stable across a person's lifetime. IQ tests seek to measure a variety of intellectual skills that include verbal, non-verbal, and spatial. This is giving me an icky feeling. I'm not going to lie. I've heard a lot of stuff about IQ tests and them being racist and not encompassing of every walk of life, and then people getting discriminated against because of IQ tests. Ooh, a little mini myth for us. Does brain size affect intelligence? No, a larger brain does not make a person more intelligent. Some studies suggest that a larger brain may contribute as much as 6% to one's intelligence. But this research has come into question. Experts doubt that a larger brain would bring any advantages because it would necessarily demand greater energy consumption, potentially contributing a drag on a person's resources. Considering all animals, including humans, there is a theory that the size of the creature's brain relative to the size of their body may confer a higher level of intelligence, and human brains constitute up to a higher ratio of our body size than do the brains of many other animals. I also thought it was the amount of connections within your brain. More of like an interconnectedness implies intelligence versus the pure size of your brain, because even if it's smaller, you could have more connections in it than in a larger brain. I don't know, that was just one thing I heard. The theory of multiple intelligence, introduced in the 80s by Harvard developmental psychologist Howard Gardner, posed a popular challenge to the construct of general intelligence. Gardner proposed that 8 different types of intelligence, from linguistic, spatial, interpersonal, kinesthetic, musical, and a later addition, the capacity to make distinctions about the natural world. What the hell does that mean? Like intuitive? There's virtually no empirical evidence to support it, and never has been. That seems very passive-aggressive. People have tried to develop tests for the independent intelligences, and when they give these to a group of people, the scores on the various tests are correlated with each other, just like all other mental tests of ability. It's true, as Gardner and others point out, that there are different cognitive abilities on which the same individual can score highly or low. But there is an underlying association between mental abilities, and it is key to the concept of general intelligence, or what intelligence researchers call G. The G factor becomes evident in a statistical analysis of individuals scored on different cognitive tests. Okay, so what they're saying is if your general intelligence is higher, your independent intelligences, as Gardner suggested existed, they would also be higher. So if I have low IQ, my musical intelligence would be worse, amongst other intelligences like emotional intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence. But if I've got high IQ, the trend would be that I'm better at those things as well. Right, so it's not that those things don't exist, it's just that they're not independent of each other, which makes sense. We are humans, we have human brains, everything is connected when it comes to psychology. Educators still love the concept of multiple intelligences, and they generally don't like the G concept so much because it implies that there are certain cognitive limitations that students have. Needless to say, the world would be more just if that were not the case, but the way I see it, educators could make good use of knowing about the G factor and what it means, because the evidence for and the predictive power of general intelligence on how successful you are in life and how well you do at school is empirically strong. I guess the miscommunication there comes from if 2 people have the same intelligence, one person might just be better at emotional reasoning than the other. From what I gather, it seems like the problem is calling it an intelligence as something that is completely independent of general intelligence. This is an obvious one, but I've heard it a lot. The 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. Where did that originate? I feel like we've all heard that somewhere. Okay, so it comes from a study in 1993 by a Florida State University psychologist, K. Anders Ericsson. This is ridiculous. It's done on violinists, and it was a self-reported thing where the best ones were asked how much practice they think they'd accumulated to that point, and they all said around 10,000 hours. So that's where the 10,000 hours thing comes from. Ericsson himself hit the brakes on this rule after it became a cultural mainstay. Said it's a popularized but simplistic view of our work circulated in the internet. So it's not the deduction that he got from his own study, it's that people took it a bit far and exaggerated that everything is a 10,000 hours game. Obviously it's not. It depends how you practice, it depends what you're practicing, it depends how you define an expert. And 10,000 hours, that's a lot of hours. This is a bad example, but for a few years, I was in the top 0.1% of all Rocket League players in the world. I was Grand Champ and Grand Champ 2 from 2019 to 2024, I want to say. That's pretty expert. I got to that point with about 2,000 hours. And most of that wasn't even dedicated practice. It was just playing games. One of the main things people talk about with this 10,000 hours thing is you can become an expert in a lot less time with focused practice and productive practice and feedback and having a mentor to guide you as well. You could play guitar for 10,000 hours and just try and not learn, but you're playing it and you don't get lessons and you just learn a couple of songs and you just play them over and over and over. You won't become an expert. Well, you might if you like pick it up well and you're intuitive and you figure stuff out. I don't know. But you could probably get to a similar level in 1,000 hours or 2,000 hours with focused, intentional learning, with support from someone that knows what they're doing, and with the feedback loop of, oh, I made this mistake, I'll fix that next time, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. For example, I don't think I've put 10,000 hours into making videos, and I did that professionally. I made short documentaries, adverts for businesses, YouTube videos, and I've done a few videos for some big brands in the UK. People in the industry saw me as an expert. I don't think I put 10,000 hours into it. Yes, I went to uni. Most of the time I spent there was not active learning. There's a few projects here and there which I feel like I did gain something from, but most of it, complete waste of time. I could have learned more in 1 year watching YouTube videos and practicing myself rather than the 3 years at uni. So obviously that's just anecdotal experience from my point of view, but there's lots and lots of research that show that 10,000 hours is not a thing. There was a study looking at chess players that found some qualified for a World Chess Federation title after as few as 3,000 hours of practice. That's just like me with Rocket League. While others required more than 20,000 hours. Who'd have thought that people were different? Some people are better at things than others and need less practice and learn better. Now look, obviously I'm just reading this from the Psychology Today. Psychology is ever developing. They're always coming out with new studies that show this or that. Potentially take these with a pinch of salt because there's lots of nuance and subtleties in these conversations that need to be accounted for. It's not just oh, this isn't true then, or this is true. There's a grey area, and that's where I feel like a lot of psychology lives. And you need to think about the bigger picture and how things are studied and what it could mean outside of the study. Personally, I don't know if I buy the one about birth order for siblings. But this is probably just my bias, is it doesn't make sense to my brain because I feel like parents would raise children differently based on when they were born. But hey, if there's enough evidence to support it, then I'll believe that. It's a tricky one. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I hope this video was interesting at least, and if you learned something, maybe it'll help you not spread some obvious misinformation. Maybe I'm spreading misinformation right now. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, there's the original study, which has levels of bias and misinformation in it. And I'm reading it from a website. Granted, it's Psychology Today, so you'd think it'd be reputable, but it's written by a person who has their own biases and understanding of stuff, so there might be misinformation there, and then it's getting filtered through my brain to your brain. So I hope it was interesting at least. I'm just trying to get people to think about this stuff a bit more because I think it's very interesting, and I think more people should think about things critically rather than just take stuff at face value because of a BuzzFeed article they saw. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and goodbye.